Here. Keith's here. Jeffersonville. Mount Washington. New Albany. Shepherdsville. Mount Washington, or no, I already said Mount Washington. St. Matthews. Clark County, here's one. Or I saw Brian.
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, Brian.
Hey,
Floyd County, I don't believe we have any folks. Anybody from IDEM or NDOT? Kentucky DAQ, how about KYTC? Who's running that? Hi, Cedro, thank you for joining us today. Metro LMA PCD, Louisville Metro Area Pollution Control District.
I'm here, Craig,
Hi,
filling
Craig.
in for Michelle.
Well, thank you for joining us. Louisville Metro.
Mike King here.
Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Amanda Deathridge online.
Join us, Amanda. Let's see, anybody from either of the river ports, Louisville Riverport Authority or Port of Indiana? See any? Oh, we got a double doozy here. How about Oldham County?
Jim Irvin. Jim Sullivan.
All right. How about TARC? That's all, Aida.
Aida Poppy.
Hi, good afternoon. How about town of Clarksville? See anybody from there? And then we have our advisory members, and I see at least one on the line, familiar face to many. Nick, you want to say hi for Federal Highways?
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Thanks for joining us, Nick.
Yeah, I got to hop on another meeting at 1:30, but here till then.
All right, great. There's Emily. Hi, Emily. Emily Lou from Louisville Metro Planning Design. All right, we most definitely have a quorum. Thank you all for joining us, and back to you, Matt.
Thank you, Andy. Next item on the agenda is the May 2023 TPC meeting minutes. Everybody should have a chance to review them in the packets. I'll ask if there's any corrections to those. If there are none, I will entertain a motion to pass it. So moved. There's a motion. Is there a second? Second. Got a second? Is there any further discussion for the minute? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. And next item on the agenda is the Transportation Policy Committee report. Andy?
Thank you very much. Transportation Policy Committee met in May on Thursday, May 25th. It was a relatively long meeting, and I'll get a little bit into it now and a little bit through some of the agenda items on today's agenda. Some of the highlights from that meeting included some of the urbanized area boundary discussion, specifically the smoothing of the census defined boundary to create what's called the federal aid urbanized area boundary. Chris will be talking a little bit about that today. Going into that meeting in late May, we thought we had a June 10th deadline, and thankfully KYTC actually extended that out to August. So we're 2 months early, I guess, as it turns out. So a little bit more on that today. We'll show you where we are on that. Very importantly, it's a big meeting for us because that was the meeting where our update to our long-range plan, our Connecting Kentuckiana Metropolitan 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and our fiscal year 2023 to 2026 TIP were approved, adopted by the TPC. At this time, those are out for federal review, and we hope to hear back hopefully by the end of the month on those. So that's good. It was a long time in the making, as you all know. We adopted those two documents, and then within like 5 minutes later, we amended the document, the TIP document. So we did amendment number 1. And if that wasn't enough, Chris has amendment number 2 for you all today. And amendment 3 next month for you all as well. And last but certainly not least, and I'll save a lot of this for later, we had some late breaking news from NDOT regarding some of the dedicated funding that comes to our region and some of the funding that's currently at risk, frankly. So we'll talk a little bit about that here on today's agenda as well. So I'll get more on that later. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Andy. Any questions for Andy? Next item on the agenda is the public comment period. Greg?
Yes, we did not receive anything prior by email or anything. I have had some issues in the chat today, so if anyone online in the public there who wants to leave comments, please use the Q&A at this time. If there are, we will address them later in the meeting. But as of right now, we don't have any public comments.
Thank you, Greg. Next item on the agenda is amendment 2 to the Connecting Susquehanna 2050 Metropolitan Plan. Chris?
Hi, everyone. Andy mentioned, today I'm going to present amendment 2 to the new MTP split connecting Kentucky Area 2050 and the fiscal year 2023 to 2026 tip. Important to note that this amendment is contingent on federal approval of both that new MTP and tip, which are currently under review, as you all know. So getting to it. As a reminder, amendments are a method to update important project changes in MTP and TIP that exceed administrative modification eligibility. So we requested amendment level project updates to be submitted from all of the sponsors by May 3rd, if you guys might remember. After that, we did our internal review for about a week, and then on May 15th, we had a IAC meeting to discuss the projects that we had. We had about 10 projects, and we decided at that meeting to split them into an exempt and a non-exempt or a full amendment. Amendment 2 is the 7 projects that received concurrence from the IAC as being exempt projects. Our public comment period ended on June 7th, and the comments were sent to the TPC on June 8th. We plan to ask for TPC action later on this month, June 22nd. So the full project listing should be in the packet for you guys. I just kind of made a small table with some highlights. The changes that are in amendment 2, we've got some changes to Oldham County's Mattingly Old LaGrange Road Trail project description. Louisville Metro is adding 2 new projects. One is the sidewalk rehab project, and one is called right sizing Louisville for safe streets. Also, Louisville Metro's got the East Market Streetscape Improvements modified. That project modified the description and the project length. And then we have Mutual Bank Road. We updated the tip funding, and the new utility space was added. We also have NDOT's new National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Project, the NEVI project, that'll be new. And we've got TARP new replacement bus project for Fifth Street. And again, the full listing, you guys can look at those in the packets if you want to. So we are requesting action for TTCP approval of amendment 2 to both the Connecting Kentuckiana 2050 MTP and the FY 23 to 26 new tip contingent on federal approval of these documents. Does anyone have any questions?
I might add that we plan to, if it's not perfectly obvious, we'll, as soon as we get the approval on this, we'll plug them right in, so it should be mostly same, approval on the update, I should say. It seems like it might come about the same time, more or less anyway, so.
As long as it's after TPC approval.
As long as it's after TPC approval, thanks for that clarification. So we're threading the needle here, but it looks like it can be threaded.
Chris, do these need to be taken separately also? The action, since you got the MPP and the
We have in the past, since it's an amendment of both, we probably should just. Formality.
well, especially since the tip you said had a contingency on it.
Well, both.
It's both.
Okay.
Yes,
It's both.
I guess that makes sense. I hadn't thought about that.
Yes, we can. We should do that.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right, there's no further questions for Chris, but I entertain a motion for passage of amendment 2 to the MTP first. Someone should, motions or second?
Second.
Does it need to include that contingency in this motion as well?
It does, because they're both brand new documents. Yes.
So can you restate what that contingency was?
Contingent on federal approval of the new MTP and new tip.
So I'm assuming your motion and second included that.
I will sit here.
Okay, yeah. Just making sure.
Yeah. Any further discussion? All those in favor of amendment to the MTP, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next action then is approval of amendment 2 for the 2023-2026 Transportation Improvement Program, contingent upon the FHWA approval. I'll entertain a motion for passage.
So,
Is there a second?
To be clear, that motion should be contingent on the.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also-
we did include it this time.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Indiana Dedicated Fund. Andy?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that our TPC meeting went a little long, and one of the reasons it went a little long is we got into some discussion about some, at that time was late breaking news. So the day before our May 25th meeting, so May 24th, we got word from NDOT of a couple things. And actually this agenda, item we'll get into Kentucky funding also. With the debt ceiling negotiations that were going on in Congress at that time around, back in May, what we quickly learned was potentially at risk. And then what was ultimately at risk was what's called the CRISA funding. Those are one of the coronavirus stimulus funds. And so as part of that bill, any unobligated CRISA funds just didn't have, like, they weren't gonna print those dollars, right? They weren't gonna stimulate the comment that. And so both states, we'll start with Indiana, because Indiana made their move first, made moves to ensure that CRISA dollars aren't left on the table. Just as a reminder, the CRISA money had an expiration date of September 30th, 2024. Okay, so projects have been programmed, and they were programmed a couple years ago, and they were all in mostly good shape, I would say, and the clock wasn't ticking on them. Not quite yet. Next fiscal year, they clearly would have been, right? But nonetheless, we thought we had plenty of time, and we did. We didn't violate, nobody violated any rules, and nobody did anything wrong in that regard. So what NDOT did is they said, we're gonna take the CRISA money that was in the name of a Clarksville project known as Riverside Drive. And that amount was like $1.2 million in federal dollars. And they were gonna deploy that and put it toward another Clarksville project known as Montgomery Avenue, Clarksville/Jeffersonville joint project, that is, Montgomery Avenue and 9th Streets. Montgomery, I get from Clarksville, 9th and Jeffersonville. When I say we, I mean the working group of Indiana LPAs. We had met the day prior on Wednesday, May 24th, to come up with the plan to make moves and what was expected to be presented at TPC. Well, we got this word from NDOT a little bit later that was going to be a problem. Okay. And so, or not that was going to be a problem, that the CRISA money was going to be moved. And so that created a more robust problem than we already had. What we already had was a contingency plan that was devised in late March to spend down our money. We have a use it or lose it system in Indiana, as we talk about all the time in here. And so we had it spent down due to all the moving parts with the Riverside Drive project in particular that created a domino effect. And we had it whittled down. We thought we had 292,000 that was at risk meaning risk of being used or lost doesn't use it or lose it equation. We could have maybe flexed it over to TARC or found something last minute to do. Well, it turns out due to the CRISA issue and another issue where the approval of additional funding to a couple projects on an April TPC and our submission to NDOT, we got to them by May 1st, but we were told that needed to be there multiple weeks in advance of May 1st. And so those additional money, when we threw additional money at projects that could have used it, we were told that those moves were too late. And so that money is not going to be able to be deployed this fiscal year. So we don't have all the answers today. But remember how I said we had 292,000? The real dollar amount that we're told by NDOT right now is somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.9 million. So $2.9 million is at risk of being lost. And that's It is what it is. It's frustrating. It's a lot of things. Just for perspective, I think that's about 35% of our annual program. So about 35% of our program is at risk right now. We don't have a whole lot of options that are still eligible on the table because the fiscal year ends here in a couple of weeks. The last best option is to do what's called flex the money over to FTA or flex it over to TARC. Take the federal highways money, provide it to TARC. What that does, it doesn't ensure that any new route will be developed in southern Indiana. It doesn't do that. But what it does, it keeps the money local. Okay. And that's kind of always been our number one goal on both sides of the river, for that matter, is to keep the money local. Because if we don't use it, NDOT will use it, but no guarantee it would be used locally. Like, no, by no means would be guaranteed to be used locally. So next week there's a meeting, June 20th. Do I have that right, Chris? Next, I think it's next Tuesday or Wednesday. Next Tuesday, June 20th, with our Indiana LPAs, where we'll be kind of discussing this further and deciding what the heck we want to do. We do have to act real soon in terms of if we want to flex that money to TARC. That's about the best option we have. And it's not a bad option. We'll be talking to TARC here in the next week or so as well. Actually, a little bit this afternoon after this meeting. So that's all I have on the Indiana side. I want to move to the Kentucky side. I know, and there is no action requested in the end. We're not prepared. We don't have anything prepared to take for action. On the Kentucky side, about a week later, this all happened on May 24th or 25th. About a week later, I think it was on May 31st. Remember the issue with CRISA dollars, right? There's also CRISA dollars that were at risk in Kentucky, it turns out. In Kentucky, in the KIPTA region, that number is about 6.49 million. So let's say 6.5 million CRISA dollars. That's in the name of 4 projects. Includes the Louisville Metro's River Road project. It includes a project in Oldham County, in Mount Washington, and a small, I say small, it's big to Middletown, but a small project in Middletown. Okay, so again, these dollars were programmed appropriately. The expiration date was September 30th of 2024 until the other day when the expiration date became that day. Okay. Because the call we got from KYTC says we had to make this move to, that day, like the House was voting like that night, and then I guess the president signed it maybe that weekend.
And I have a question.
Yes, sir.
This is only just part of that bill for the ceiling, so the fallback that they're talking about.
Yes.
So this is all for just the CRISA dollars that have not been authorized.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's
So I
correct.
had some too, but they've been authorized.
Yeah, so that's perfectly fine.
We call it-
No harm, no foul. So it was in-
That's why you didn't get a phone call.
That's right. That's right. So it was the name of 4 projects. So that's the bad news. The good news is KYTC committed to matching it dollar for dollar, replacing every dollar they took out and for their own purposes. And by the way, those purposes were going to be to utilize or to deploy them on the iMove project. That's the Gene Snyder interchanges at 64 and 71, the I-71 widening from Gene Snyder to Crestwood, and the Gene Snyder widening from Taylorsville Road to I-71 project that they consolidated 4 projects into one. They're using some sort of pay-as-you-go method, and so they were easily able to take that 6.5 million on May 31st, and whenever this happened, and throw it straight at that project, and good. The money's once again being spent locally. So the commitment was made to match it dollar for dollar. Okay, so that's good. The issue is there's not clarity as of this time on what the new dollars are called. Okay, they took CRISA dollars, but what are they replacing them with? That remains the question, and that's the question we have out to them at this time, to be clear. That's good, that's fine. We'll get that figured out. We'll make the administrative modifications to the TIP and whenever we have that information. The issue could become is the local match requirement on those dollars. In Kentucky, or when CRISA was created a few years ago, states could require a local match, or they didn't have to. Okay, and so as might normally be the case around here, the 2 state DOTs took different approaches.
Ours were 100%.
That's exactly right. In Kentucky, there was no match required. It's 100% federal. In Indiana, NDOT required a match, and that's fine, that's every state's option, so it's 80-20. So I think you can see where I'm getting here, is the money that we got replaced dollar for dollar, they took out 100% federal dollars. And it's likely to be, we're concerned that it's likely to be replaced as an 80-20, and so that does create a local match burden here at the last minute in some of these projects cases. That we don't have those answers right now, we don't know that it's a certainty, but we think it's a high likelihood that there will be a local match on those dollars, as is the case on virtually all of the federal dollars.
Both in Indiana and Kentucky?
No.
Just Indiana.
In Kentucky. In Kentucky, because in Indiana, the money wasn't, they didn't replace it.
So it's not a dollar for dollar.
So again,
replacement then.
The news was way better in Kentucky, right? Because they're replacing the dollars. We believe that it's highly likely that they're replacing 100% of the dollars, in essence, with effectively 80% of the dollars, right? Because of virtually all the federal funding sources do indeed require that 80-20 match. And so that's the bad news. The good news is it didn't get taken, okay, that's not very procedure. But the bad news is that it's likely that there will be a local match burden on these phases of these projects, because a lot of them were, if I'm not mistaken, supplements to other funding that the project has received. We drew some CRISA dollars at it to supplement the costs of those things. And that's what we did, as I recall, a couple of years ago, was to ease the local match burden on projects that were already somewhat in the works, right? Including J-Town project as well. So that's the update as we know it now. We're gonna meet with our Indiana friends, like I said, next Tuesday. There will likely be action at TPC to make whatever moves final on the Indiana side. I think likely, don't hold me to this, but I think likely is to move money to FTA to park again, to keep it local. But we're gonna exhaust every last option we can. There's no reason to give it back, in my opinion. So that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions or go, in the coming days or weeks, research something for anyone further and see what we can do to make the best of that situation.
Okay, so you did label this as action requested, but that is not the case.
That is not the case. It's not, no. There likely will be action at TPC for some.
Andy, I don't think that fight is completely over yet. From talking to folks in Brett Guthrie's offices, you and I were just talking, budgetary for us, we didn't put matching money in the budget. Because you're gonna have to. So now, and
Right.
again, what I've asked our federal people, define what is, we allocated money.
Mhm.
I think they're getting into semantics and again, I made the bell threat that somebody will primary you if you go through with this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's what's clear to me, and what I want everybody on the TTCC to know, that in this case, nobody did anything wrong.
No,
We followed the rules.
please don't, I don't mean it like that. The only people that
Oh,
I
no. Yeah.
called out on this are the folks voting on this stuff.
Mhm.
Because again, none of us asked for this money. I mean.
No.
Now, somebody offers you something, you take it.
Yeah, you don't say no, that's right.
Yeah, and so we were all in this, it's not like we came, hat in hand.
No.
It was here, we followed the rules. That's been my point to our folks. We followed the rules. You guys followed, we did everything exactly like they said. They moved the dates. Okay, that's not fair. Okay, we still tried to do everything the right way. I just know on our level, we'll continue to fight them on this.
Yeah.
So
And
you're already getting word out of the cabinet that they're not gonna replace it dollar for dollar, 100% versus.
we do not have that we don't have that. We have that they're replacing it dollar for dollar.
Which would mean 100%.
Except if.
Not necessarily.
Not the match,
Yeah.
but
It's the match, right?
Yeah,
And the timing was what the difficult thing was,
That's exactly
because budgets were already, ours was
That's
already in Frankfurt. You can't go add capital, and it's not a ton of money, but it makes a difference, because now I don't have a line item in our capital improvement budget for this match.
understood. And hopefully it can be matched in some other way, but again, I don't have that. I wish we could.
And I don't
Or
know.
toll credits might have been the way of the past, but there's no toll credits anymore, so that's. I don't want.
And to Jim's point on that, and and I don't know how we fix this, and it's probably not for anybody in this room. But when these decisions are made, and we see this, we see it more from Frankfurt, on the Frankfurt side than the federal side, because we deal with them more so. The decisions are made without bringing, I mean, we're kind of the grunts, and we're not brought into these discussions. And it's just like, okay, if something like this is gonna happen, give us some kind of leeway.
Sure.
With the budget process, or at least think about the people that are doing this. And again, I don't know how we change that.
Or give some credibility to program dollars versus authorized.
100%, right? Because every one of us know we're gonna spend it. We've got it marked. Do we have an account open or, we even went to the point where we were hearing things like ambulances that we ordered a year ago that they can't get a chip or they can't get this.
Mhm.
Well, that money might go.
Yeah.
Okay, we've ordered it. We've got the money set aside. It's not being used for anything else. How is that? So again, I don't, my frustration comes in the people making these decisions never ask anybody that has to make it work.
Mhm.
And
So we're looking at that,
So
too. We got, that, ARPA and the other ones too,
Yeah.
And you hear about the clawbacks when they affect those, not just these dollars,
That's-
for instance.
yeah.
And our attorney's looking into that too, they're hoping that the interpretation may be if you've already had something under the contract. And that could be for purchases and stuff.
We've heard the same thing. That's why we're like, okay,
I'm dealing with the police department with it and an amphitheater, so,
Yeah. it's tough. It's tough.
No, this conversation is gonna go on. It's clear that it's not over yet. Whether there's great news in the future or just okay news or I hope there's no more bad news. Hey, you have 6.5 million, or hey, you have 6.5 in Kentucky, 1.2 in Indiana. That's just kind of goes up in smoke. Again, at least they're both being deployed locally. They're being deployed on a different Clarksville project in Indiana. They're being deployed on a key interstate project in Kentucky. And hopefully that provides flexibility down the road.
The principle is good, the mechanics are what's
That's
hard.
exactly right. That's exactly right. And I don't know, what would we do differently? I really don't know. If we knew that they were gonna take it back on May 31st of 2023, we obviously would have done something different. What happens when there's their next stimulus round or whatever the next thing is? Do we just deploy it at one project we believe is a regional project and just get it out the door? Maybe we could make number decisions for that. I know that. It'd be hard to find that, perfect project. I know it would, but again, that's.
We still have to come up with American policy with the county, because there always seems to be our go-to whenever these situations come up where we trade out that money.
That's right. And they didn't do anything wrong either, right? And now the goodness of the cabinet's heart is they chose to replace it dollar for dollar. So we should all be very thankful for that, by the way.
Yeah, no, I don't think, I mean, there's nobody in this room. We all did everything we're supposed to do. Everybody in this room. And it's just politics sometimes.
Yeah, indeed. So more on that next month, more on that PPC, sure.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions for Andy? Next item on the agenda is the Safe Streets for All grant. Andy?
Yeah, that's me too. So, no action on this one. It's just an update for those that didn't know, that don't know, that need an update.
6 says action requested.
There was no action. Yeah,
Sorry.
we were thinking last week we might need action on what kind of that conversation, but it's just not ready for action at this time, so is the reality of that. Safe Streets and Roads for All. So got good news to report on that. That RFQ, as we're calling it, request for qualifications, is out on the street right now. Respondents have until June 28th. Okay. Sounds like there's some interested parties because we did get we got at least questions. Questions were due to KIPTA, clarifying questions were due to KIPTA, I think last week. Responses are due by Friday, so we'll be posting those on our website. If you haven't already. Again, Safe Streets and Roads for All, for those that don't remember, that's KIPTA was awarded $600,000 federal dollars to be matched with $150,000 local dollars from the communities around our region to do an action plan, safety action plan. What that will do, it will open up the possibility for funding to all the jurisdictions around the region. Much like it's available to jurisdictions like Louisville Metro and New Albany at this time, because both of those agencies actually had a legal, or I can remember, a legal safety plan that allows them to pursue safe streets and roads for all money. One of those projects that pursued that money was one of the projects in Amendment 2 that Chris just mentioned, the right sizing rule for safe streets, I believe is what it's called. So that's good. So that's 20 million, 21 million, 20 something $million of safe streets and roads for all implementation money that's going to be spent in our region. Once the rest of us get caught up and have this action plan, we will all be eligible to pursue a future round of funding. So the invoices, I think, were sent out to all the agencies probably back in May. We received a few, so we appreciate if we get those, because that will help us. Frankly, it'll help us reimburse our consultant a little bit more quickly, because it's a big ticket item. It'll take a little bit to get the bills from the consultant and then over to KYTC, or excuse me, dealing directly with Federal Highway Administration. This is not a deal between the KYTC, as is only the case with a lot of our funding. Be happy to answer any questions. Again, probably by this time next month, we will have a good feel for who that firm might be, or who at least the highest scoring firm will be. And hopeful that maybe 1st of August or so, we might have somebody either under contract or pretty darn close to it. 1st of August, we're thinking it'll take, probably from a notice proceed, probably, it's probably like a 12 to 18 month process. It's gonna be a big deal. It's gonna be a lot of work. It's gonna be a lot of interesting work. It's gonna be good dynamics. And again, what we promised to everybody, to you all, is that each and every jurisdiction will have, that's a partner in this, will have a local plan, a local chapter, a plan, whatever we end up calling it, that will be hopefully a go-to for you all to say, here's some of the hottest spots in my city, my county, what have you. And that will help you all in your planning efforts for not just the Safe Streets and Roads for All money, but the Highway Safety Improvement Program money, or just the plain old SLO, STBG money. If it's a good safety project, it might be a good project overall, probably is actually, to pursue all the different funding options. But again, this is, update maybe 6 or 7. This is Alex Pazorski, who's always updating me all, and we're finally got some real movement. And again, at the end of this month, we'll really have some movement. We'll probably have, we'll get those proposals in, and we'll get somebody right to work is the plan anyways. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but that concludes that agenda item with no action requested.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Next item on the agenda is the urbanized area boundary. Chris.
Yeah. Hey, folks. So, you have a presentation. Yep. There. So we're near the end of our role in the delineation component of the adjusted urban boundary. And I'm gonna go through a quick summary of some relevant items just to make sure everyone's up to speed. So the census defined urban area boundaries, those happen every 10 years. The census and the FHWA have differing definitions of urban. Adjustments can be made to the boundary that Federal Highways uses through a collaborative process of the federal and state highway departments, local jurisdictions, and NPOs. But the Federal Department of Transportation has the final say in what that delineation would be. The census defined adjustments are not allowed, however. As we understand it, if using the same rules as previous years, the financial determinations of the urban area boundary or the jagged boundary are not going to change. That's as far as we know at this time. We have no reason to believe that that would change. And KIPTA has completed a series of working meetings, which most of you are aware, and we discussed and planned, and these were discussed and planned at the May TPC meeting last month. Also, we used a an interactive mapping link at these meetings, and we brought some paper maps to aid us in creating our recommended boundary, which I'll be showing you toward the end of the presentation, what the end product is. Okay. And stop. Seems like this keeps happening to me. Last time.
Yeah, it's the.
Can everybody online hear us? We haven't lost our connection, have we? Yeah, I see some thumbs up.
It's like, Curry sharing it again. Looks like it was the PowerPoint itself. It's,
Can you maybe share?
it just post that real.
Hang with us. While Greg's doing that, I want to thank everybody that participated, many of which are in the room today, and I'm grateful. So your help is, as always, much appreciated. Cedro, thanks for coming, represent KYTC in the process too.
Andy, you're taking all my talking.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, I'll sit this. I was trying to be fair.
I was gonna get to that too. But it's good. There we are. Okay, so I just made a quick little table of the timeline. As most of you know, we've had a series of meetings, CPCC meetings, where I went through presentations about what the census defined urban area boundary is, what the criteria is and was, the changes, and basically our plans and as they unfolded. And as I mentioned, CPC meeting last month, we got approval to proceed with drafting the recommendations. And then we had 5 meetings, and those are the dates where we went ahead and delineated as we saw fit together. Certainly a collaborative effort, and again, special thanks to Cedro was at all 3 of our Kentucky meetings, so that was cool to work with him on that level. And this week, we've been working on our final edits to the draft. And our shape files, we're gonna send those potentially today or later this week. So we'll get those into both KYTC and INDOT very soon. So first, I'm gonna talk about the jagged boundary. Jagged boundary is the census defined boundary. This map should look a little bit familiar. What it represents is the Louisville, Jefferson County, Kentucky, Indiana census defined urban area boundary. And the changes that happened in 2020 based off of that new criteria I mentioned. The newly gained territories displayed in the green, the lost territory is in the red, and that does include the new Mount Washington and LaGrange separate UZAs. Also, I want to note that Charlestown was a separate UZA back in 2010. So again, this is just the Louisville urban boundary. The total boundary, the total jagged boundary would be all of the yellow plus the green in this picture. And so this slide is showing the evolution of the Louisville urban area boundary or jagged boundary from 2000 to 2010 to 2020. So you can see there's some changes, but in contrast between the years 2020, we lost a lot of area to that jagged boundary. Now this slide is showing all of the jagged boundaries that are included within the KIPTA metropolitan planning area. So we have the Louisville jagged boundary, and then I also have some images of Mount Washington, LaGrange, and Charlestown here, and I'll get to the reason why in a moment. Louisville, it should be noted that Louisville is the only UZA that has a high enough population required to create an MPO. So there is a difference between the Louisville one and these smaller UZAs, but they are all included in our planning area. So now I'll look at the smooth boundary with you all. Smooth boundary is of the Louisville adjusted urban area boundary only. And what we came up with in collaboration of all of the meetings is that we made one adjustment within the MPA. So our adjustments, they cover the area that's currently expected to become urban between now and the next update, which will be sometime after 2030 when the census makes their new update. And or it was included per the procedural guidelines, such as creating one contiguous shape, not having small islands or irregular, extra complex shapes. And we also included traffic generators. It is a little bit of an odd shape, but this was the best we could do. It's hard to make it a perfect square.
But what this is, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, it's basically the green is what we added in each of the local meetings. Whatever the folks in each county recommended is what we show here.
Exactly, yes. The green is the adjustments. The yellow is what was Louisville, and then we also have the smaller BZAs included, so we're one united MPA area,
Why not?
urban area.
Yes.
Because I think we could all agree on one thing, all of these areas that are covered are considered to be urban or will be by the next census one. Okay. So the next steps, as I mentioned, we're gonna go ahead and send the GIS shapefiles to NDOT and KYTC for review. And at that point, it's a little bit out of our hands. Federal Highways will take the next steps on their end. And I think one thing I can say is we'll communicate any new info if there's any changes to the final version, or if they accept it as is from what we all collaboratively produced. We'll let you know. Also, any updates to the implications of what the smooth boundary may or may not mean. If we get more information about that, we'll talk about that in the future. If anyone has any questions, or if Andy has anything else to say.
I don't think so. I mean, this is just a reminder, this is kind of like it's a step along the process. There'll be other things that change. I think she had functional classification. That's one of them up there. The MPA, Metropolitan Planning Area, would be adjusted presumably to remove the 0.1 square miles of Harrison County, Indiana, because the jagged boundary no longer goes out there. There's probably no good reason for the smooth boundary to go out there. Interestingly, we might trade, I think we've basically traded 0.1 square miles in Harrison for 0.1 square miles or so, one tiny census block in Shelby County. So,
We still have that.
so the smooth Shelby County boundary, by the way, we didn't mention Shelby, is the same as it was before, same 4 square miles. The jagged boundary is what changed. It shrunk, just like it did all around the suburbs. So that what that does, by the way, it does, you know, I guess in theory, it would make the one road that it borders, I guess, I suppose eligible for federal dollars at the table, but that's about all that is. Right, that doesn't mean a whole lot in terms of what it would mean for Shelby.
And again, thank you to everyone who participated in setting up the meetings and attending the meetings and all of this
Absolutely.
big group effort.
Yeah, it's an interesting process, I think. I hope you all
Yeah.
enjoyed it. I mean, it's something
Yeah,
that
good exercise.
exercises the mind a little bit, and it's not just, you know, funding and project. It's a little bit of, hey, let's look at maps, let's fix maps, let's make a difference, and let's see, let's you know, do what we're supposed to do, you know, on this process. And get it out of our hands in the end.
That's all I got. No action on that.
Thank you, Chris. I'll just stay for next,
Yeah.
agenda item is number 9, administrative modification 1. Chris?
Okay. Right, I have one short little presentation to go with this one. So this is for and line number 1 and 2. Engine on federal level.
There we go.
All right,
All right.
everybody still there?
All right. Sorry about that. We lost internet here in Kipton, so apologize for that. I think we're back on now though.
All right. We're ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good.
We got everyone? Okay.
Yep, we're good.
Okay, sorry about that. Oops. So this administrative modification, it's a collection of projects that were communicated to KIPTA after our final drafts of the new MTP and CHIP went to public comment. So I'm gonna go through in general what those are, but remember the date of when they went to public comment. March,
For which amendment, or which one?
the new MTP and TIP.
Those were out in. Yeah.
Okay, so for the most part, every change that all of our sponsors needed post-March, those are gonna be in here, every admin mod, specific change. It's a bit of a catch-up admin mod if there was a theme. Where we need to catch up the new tip with changes that are in the old tip. And these most recent changes are administrative modification 44, which happened back March 29th. Most of administrative modification 45, it includes the Kentucky portion, like Andy was discussing earlier in his update. The Indiana changes that were originally on that are not included in this admin mod. And then it also includes number 46, which was about 25 KYTC changes. Then we also have some new project changes that were not needed in the old tip, and they've just kind of been waiting and are continuing to wait for our new tip as soon as we have the federal approval. We don't normally talk about the project listings for administrative modifications at TTCC, but because there's so many changes on this list, we're gonna send a link to everyone. So those of you who have projects, we ask that you kind of look for your projects and make sure that it's what you're expecting in there. I definitely want to say we're not looking for new project changes. This is just the projects that were communicated to us between March and now, essentially. Of course, we'll have more in the future, no doubt, but I just want to make sure that we have what y'all are expecting on that list. And again, of course, this is contingent on the federal approval of the new tip to get these in. We have a very specific order of how we need to process all of our changes. The first order is we have to have the MTP, the new MTP. We had TPC approval of that on May 25th, but we still are under federal review, as y'all know. And same with the new fiscal year 23 to 26 tip. TPC approval was May 25th, and Amendment 1, TPC approval was May 25th. So all of those would be coming in first when it comes time for you guys to update the state STIPs. We want to process that one first, then Amendment 2. But we won't have the TPC approval of Amendment 2 again until June 22nd. So in the event that we get our new MTP and TIP approved before that, we still need to wait till June 22nd for TPC approval of Amendment 2. Then sandwiched in between 2 and 3 is where we need to have amendment or administrative modification number 1. And part of the reason for that is because it's just the order of how the project changes happened. There's a couple of projects that made changes here and then made additional changes after this. And so we're gonna have to process them accordingly so that it makes sense in all of the steps. And then lastly, next month, we're gonna talk more about Amendment 3, and we have anticipated TPC approval for that on July 22nd. Do you have anything you wanted to add in the timeline? No?
No, it's a quirky thing. It's a lot of moving parts and just, you know, what you need to know most is that this is getting all the projects back to where they need to be, so they don't go back to the way they used to be.
Yeah, sounds like a song.
No action is requested. Just wanted to give you guys information of the plans, and we will get that link out, if not at the TPC mailing, not around that time.
Yeah, please do check that link out and make sure what's in there is the right way your projects need to be, because Chris it's the biggest project list we'll ever create, basically, in that standard format, like Amendment 2 format, like we had, where we show the strike through in the red, showing the stuff that's out and stuff that's new. So a lot of moving parts. So please do check your projects and say, hey, you missed a 0 there. Hopefully you can do that. But you know, just if in doubt, just give Chris or myself a call. We'll get it figured out.
Yes, please do, because it's gonna be a draft until we actually have the approval, so we can make any last minute changes to the project listing if we need to. But yeah, hopefully we're good. Some of these projects changes were communicated to me, you know, months ago, so I just want to make sure. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Chris? Next item on the agenda is the planning studies, Andy.
All right. Goes online. I guess I'll be on the Zoom call, not on my computer here. I've got a brief slideshow. We talked a little bit last month about this, that in our FY 2024 budgeting process, through our Unified Planning Works Program, or UPWP. And as a result of a year plus ago, influx of a lot of new money with the new infrastructure law. Basically, there's a lot more of these things called metropolitan planning or PL funds that were provided to MPOs. And these are the funds that we as an MPO need to match one way or the other. And one of the ways And most of the match is paid for through the local dues that your all's agencies pay into KIPTA. Well, we got a lot more money and we don't have a whole lot more to match with. So in part, we can still take some of that money and we can deploy it toward planning studies. And so we initiated a process where all the TPC and TTC jurisdictions were eligible to apply for some of these dollars. And when these dollars are awarded, the local match gets shifted to the local government away from KIPTA's book, so to speak, into the locals. So go ahead, next slide, please. Here's kind of what I was saying. So in this upcoming fiscal year, we get 1.3 million in change in Kentucky in these metropolitan planning funds, or that's what we call PL, 300-something thousand in Indiana. Where they're used for, they're used to keep the lights on, so to speak. When I say PL funds, I also mean PL funds, but I also mean FTA Section 5303 funds. Those are similar dollars from Federal Transit Administration. So those things get commingled into our planning budgeting here. And so where we get 1.3 million in Kentucky of PL from FHWA, if you will, via KYTC, we get via KYTC, and from FTA, we get 250,000 federal. And in Indiana, we get close to 73,000, or we're going to fiscal 24. As I mentioned earlier, there's a big increase with the new infrastructure law, and these require an 80-20 local match. I put an asterisk there because that biggest line item, the 1.349 million, the Kentucky money, we're very thankful that KYTC pays a bit of that match for us. They pay of the 20% local match that's required. They pay 5 of the 20 or 25%, how you want to look at that, of the match. So we're very thankful for that. That's a big dollar amount because of being the biggest dollar amount on the screen there. And so we made about 250,000 available and budgeted, and those applications were due in late May. So next slide. We received 2 applications, one from the city of Jeffersontown and one from Louisville Metro. City of Jeffersontown requested 60,000 federal dollars. And proposed to match it to 20,000 above the 80-20 split, 75-25 split. And then Louisville Metro proposed a project bike implementation plan, 150,000 local, 150,000 federal, 50-50 split. I guess at this time, I'd like to maybe ask Matt or Mike if there's anything you'd like to say about the project and kind of describe it at least a little bit. What you can do. You want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, so this is something that we as Metro actually put into our city budget this year, but was pulled out. Basically, our bike master plan is woefully out of date, and we need to do a pretty substantial effort to that with a big focus on implementation. So when that was pulled out of our budget requests through Public Works, we were very fortunate to be able to see this funding opportunity as a chance for us to offset some of that cost. The 150,000 that we're using for our local match is part of some funding that was put aside a few years ago for the BIL match. So we were pretty optimistic that we hoped if we could do a 50-50 match, this would be a much needed planning program that we have here within Louisville, Jefferson County. That's kind of where we are. That was the line of thinking.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah. Ours is we're building a new police department. We're getting a lot more economic development, pressure in our downtown, multi-node, downtown Jeffersontown is kind of a small 225-year-old city that has a lot of small streets. And so this study is going to help us look at all of our connecting streets, not only the local streets that we have, but also in all the arterial and the states and the metro through roads, where we can make sure we have a strategy that's going to work well for some of the future growth in the area, and then also look at the parking. This one also try to dictate what improvements are going to be needed with anticipation of the amphitheater construction, police department, and other downtown development activities. So it's specific to our town center, if you will, which is basically our downtown foreign district, which makes up then our gaslight squares.
Thank you, Matt. So what you can probably notice that if we add the 60 and the 150 of the federal money requested, that's only $210,000, isn't it? And I mentioned earlier that we had 250,000 federal dollars available. So if y'all don't mind, I'm going to propose an action here, and when I didn't ask for an action on that one of those agenda items, I'm going to replace it with an action here. So I'm going to propose a funding scenario. Next slide, please. That funding scenario is the following: since we have 250,000 available, And since that money is tough for KIPTA as an agency to match, we do want to make sure that it gets out of our hands, so to speak. And so what I am proposing here is to award 4,000 additional federal dollars to J-Town. Why 4,000? Well, that's the amount that gets them to the 80-20 split. Okay, so that's good, or I hope that's good. And then the rest of the money, that is, again, what were we at? So we had 40,000 extra, so $36,000. The 40,000 we had additional, potentially gave forward to J-Town. The $36,000 would be potentially awarded to Louisville Metro. That gets us to the 250,000 federal dollars that we said was available. For those that are counting at home, it's a 62 to 38% split. So they were 50-50. So 62 is better than, or 38 is better than 50, I guess, in that regard. And so I think that would be staff's recommendation here. Again, I did not list this as an action item at the time, but I think it's worthy of an action to recommend this to the TPC if this body chooses to do so. There's like, for those that aren't J-Town or Louisville Metro, I would imagine we'll be in the same spot next year. So be thinking about that over the coming months. And with that, I guess I will request that action to be potentially be recommended for the TPC's approval later this month, next week, actually.
Thank you, Andy. Is there any other questions about the planning studies? If not, then I would entertain a motion to accept Andy's recommendation of the funding split, which differed from the application presented by both candidates.
I'll make the motion.
And a motion, is there a second? Second. Got a second? Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Raise your hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next time on the agenda is other business.
Got a couple announcements, if that's okay. I'll be quick. A person I want everybody in the room virtually and in the room and virtually to meet is Mr. Brady Hill back here in the white shirt. Brady joined KIPTA just the first of the month and recent post-grad graduate of University of Iowa, is that right? And previously from University of Texas. Is that right? So BYU, big Texas fan. Texas fan is what he is, from Texas. So I want everybody to get to know Brady a little bit. Brady will be working with Chris quite a bit on the tip stuff, among other things. So I think everybody will get to know Brady over the coming weeks, months, and hopefully years. So welcome, Brady. Next week, literally next week, next Monday, a gentleman named Kyle Thorne is going to be starting his first day at KIPTA. Kyle's a recent graduate from undergraduate degree from UK. So he's a big fan of urban planning. He's saying stories about how he's a kid. His parents made his take them to the Move Louisville meetings. And I think he even worked for Mike a little bit, or with Mike.
Yeah, he interned for us for a little bit.
As a
When
teenager.
he was in high school.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah, so we like that. We like to hear that. And there's somebody local and somebody that has a passion for this. That's gonna be, that's good. So we'll get to meet Kyle. You all get to meet Kyle soon. As I mentioned earlier, a couple meeting announcements. Next Tuesday, June 20th, is when the Indiana LPAs are convening at Clarksville for our quarterly meetings. At that time, we'll probably talk about some of the funding issues that we have. So again, that's Tuesday, June 20th, 10:30, Clarksville Town Hall in the executive conference room there. Another meeting announcement of note is the next day, on Wednesday, June 21st. The KIPTA, let's call it the KIPTA Regional Interagency Consultation Group is going to meet to discuss Amendment 3. Amendment 3 is a full amendment, and so therefore it requires that air quality analysis you all also often hear us talk about. And so there's going to be an IAC meeting. Some of you all are involved in the IAC, some of you are not, and that's okay. No cause for alarm. But EPA has requested a special meeting just to go over the new rules that are required of us based on, let's see, in Kentucky, not meeting the regional ozone standards in time or not submitting them in time. We have met them. The air is clean now. The air has met the standards for the past 2 years, but the process to get that right took a little bit longer in Kentucky, and so there's some consequences there. Again, that meeting is Wednesday, the 21st. Another thing I want to mention is any invoices for any studies and contracts. For example, like some, the studies that were awarded last year through the process I just mentioned. There's a couple, three of those, two, three of them. I think we have most of those. We've got one in good shape. There's a couple that we need, and there's a couple other studies and invoices. If you have invoices to KIPTA for FY23 action or activities, we need those by the first week or so of July. Okay, so that's real important that we get those in real soon. That goes beyond the PL studies, by the way. It goes to the traffic counting study, Metro, among a few others. I want to recognize, last but not least, I want to recognize Robin Bolte and from NDOT, Vince from Trimark, Tracy from KYTC, Larry from New Albany. You all joined us late, appreciate you. And special welcome to Taylor Heron. Taylor Heron's from NDOT. Welcome back, Taylor. Good to hear from you. Good to see you again. So Taylor's with Seymour District for those that don't know Taylor. Great. That's all I have. Appreciate y'all joining us on this lovely Flag Day.
Thank you, Andy. Any other item to go before this committee? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Jim? No move. Mike? Second?
Got it.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Motion carries.